Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges. Did you know that your food can do your thinking for you? And maybe the food that you're giving your teenagers is actually creating more arguments than you know. Today, I have a guest that will give you information about that, and I will introduce her in a little bit. But before that, I want to let you know that if you want to be notified when I go live, you can go in the description of this video, and there is a link that you can click, and then you will be added to the people that I ping 5 minutes before my show. Also, if you know a single mom who's struggling by herself, who's feeling isolated and lonely in her struggle, please let her know about this show, because there is no reason why someone should struggle by herself when there are so many resources, and we definitely are a resource. So don't hesitate to share. If you like what you're hearing, you can let us know as well. I always enjoy when people interact, whether live or on replay. As I always say, replay is the new life. If this is the first time that we meet, my name is Muriel Felous. As you can hear, I am known as your French life coach, and I help single moms avoid the arguments with their teenagers through letting go of the inflammatory factors. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, who is an expert and will help us today understand a lot about how food is interacting with our body and with our brain, and therefore with our thoughts and our emotions. Her name is Devra Betts. She's a wellness architect and the author of the newly published book, Wake the Health Up, a book that serves as a toolkit to transform your life and create optimal health and happiness. And I will let her tell you the rest herself, because she actually did it for herself before she wrote the book. So here we go. Hi, Debra. How are you?
Hi, Muriel. I'm doing terrific.
I'm happy to have you on the show today, because I actually have a son who's ADHD, and I know that food is a major factor in how much he's going to be able to help himself.
Yes, food definitely is one of the factors that impact our coping mechanisms and our ability, our thoughts and everything. So thank you so much for having me with you tonight.
I'm really happy to have you here. And before we go into the great information that you're going to share today, I would love it if you could tell your own story, because I know you did heal yourself through food and other aspects of your life. And I would love the audience to know how do you, I mean, not how, because you can't explain everything in this show, but some of your story.
Certainly. Well, about 12 years ago, my doctor looked at me and said, you know, if something doesn't change and change drastically fast, you are going to be suffering the same thing that your parents did. And it took both of their lives prematurely, and that was heart disease and diabetes. And, you know, up until that point, nothing seemed to affect me, even though I had signs all over the place that, you know, my gallbladder was out, I had a seizure disorder, I had, you know, my immune system was tanked. I didn't connect any of that with food. It was just part of life, and it was what I was to expect, until I started doing some research on how do I heal my body? What role does food play? And the more I learned, the more intrigued I became when I realized that the power to change my health laid within my own hands and the power of my choices. And so I went back to school and did some, you know, learning, some educating about lifestyle choices and food and how the role that plays in health. And probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with leaky gut. I had severe fatty liver. I had, was diagnosed after diagnosis. And now all those are reversed. And it was through diet and lifestyle changes.
Literally reversed.
Yes.
Oh, that's
no evidence of them.
That
Now,
really
yeah.
shows you the power of food.
Yes. Yes.
So my first question, the one that came to my mind, is where did you start? Because it's a lot of information, and I suspect that you cannot do everything at once. I guess it's gradual.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you start first?
I was introduced to a high quality supplement. And when I began that, I saw such a drastic change in my health that's what triggered the connection. How does taking a vitamin change how I feel in the morning, or how my clarity? And it was because I was so nutrient deficient that my body was reacting to that.
Wow. Yes, because based on what I've read in your book and everywhere else, we can eat, feel full for a little bit, but we can completely we can eat without nurturing. Is that when you bring nutrients to your body, like nurturing your body?
Yeah.
And I would never have suspected that if I didn't learn about food too.
Right. So when you consume food in nature, that is, our bodies know what to do with it. Right.
Yes.
So you eat an apple and it's got all these vitamins and fiber and everything, and your body says, oh, it's an apple. I know what to do with that. But if you give it a bag of highly processed crackers that has literally no nutritive value, the body just says, what do I do with this? And so it stores it as fat, or it mucks up the system in the body.
I don't know what's ringing, but I don't see any messages on my side. Yeah. I usually don't have a ringing like that. Is it on my side or your side?
I think it's mine, but I don't see where it's coming or what it's
anyway. Let's just pretend. I guess it's the universe telling us, pay attention. This is important.
This is important. Ring, 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 ring.
Yes.
So it's like the alarm clock. Wake the health up.
Exactly. That's because of the title of your book. So in my audience, I have a lot of single moms, and as you know, children don't always respond well when we try to implement changes in their diets. And I know in my house, we've always eaten a lot of veggies because that's how I grew up. I grew up in France, and we cook most of our meals. But as my children became teenagers, I've seen two of them starting to be more influenced by their friends and by the junk food. And we don't buy sodas in my house, but they drink it outside. What can a mother do if she cannot control completely what they eat, but to increase the quality of their food?
I think, especially if we're talking about teenagers,
yes.
I think it's time to be honest with our teenagers, because it's got to be frustrating for them as well. So if we can educate them, just like it's my, I really want to educate adults, but also adults with kids, and then pass on that education to kids. These are your choices. This is what this choice will do to your body. This is what this choice will do to your body. And then you choose, right? And I think that the children I know who have experienced what better health looks like, it may not happen overnight, but eventually they see for themselves. And it's not pleasant dealing with stomach issues or even acne, right? It's so simple. Acne is what's going on inside the body. We try to treat the outside with, the face creams and whatever, pills. But yet if we paid attention to what's going on inside the body, that would take care of the acne. And so I think educating our children on some level would be helpful. On other levels, it could be as simple as, I love you enough that this is what I'm going to buy in the house. And when you go out into the world, we have to make choices. They have to learn how to make those choices. And if we teach them how to eat healthy, and then when they make those, it's like the 80-20 rule.
Yes.
If they eat really well 80% of the time, that when they have something, when they go out into the world to their friend's house, it's not going to be as devastating on their body.
And that's really how it works in my house. And for me as a coach, what I would tell a mom who's in that situation is, don't be afraid if your son or daughter is not going to like you for a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
they may not like it, especially if you're used to have more stuff in your house that is not that great for your body. Be willing to be into a little bit of conflict sometimes is not bad when it leads to something better.
I
Go
think you're
ahead.
right, because we want to be our children's friends and make
Yes.
them like us, and that's not our job. Our job is to raise them to be adults and to learn how to take care of themselves and make good choices.
Which is why in the way I coach, I love to take care of, I have 3 pillars. It's take care of my own, what I call my own crap, the one between me and me, the one where I feel unloved and I'm trying to be loved by everybody outside of myself, including my kids, which is not healthy. You need to work on your stuff first, or, all the wounding from childhood and all that. Then the crap between you and your child, which is in those moments of arguments, how do you respond? How do you let yourself to be engaged in the drama, or do you stay more neutral? And there are ways to
Mhm.
stay more neutral, and food actually plays a role in that, and we're going to talk about it. And then the third part is the crap between you and the divine or the universe, because we have access to a higher guidance. But if we have junk in the middle, we can't actually receive it. We have big roles as parents, huge roles.
Mhm.
So now I would like to ask you, let's say that let's talk about the way that the gut has an impact on the brain, because that's how food actually can interact with our brain and create more problems with coping mechanisms and behaviors. Could you give us a little bit of explanation for people who are new to that?
Certainly. So we'll start with food. Before we start with food, I would just like to say, if you notice behavior issues with your children, really, start paying attention to what's going on in their life. Are they sleeping enough? Is it
Oh, yeah.
quality sleep? How much screen time are they getting, especially like the hour before they go to bed? Is it possible their circadian rhythms are out of balance? And how much stress is in their lives? Because all of that, just like an adult, all those are going to impact your children and their behavior
Yeah.
in some ways. So when it comes to food, you were talking about our role between us and the divine. The divine, I feel like my view is the divine created us magnificently, and the body can heal itself when we feed it properly. And so part of that feeding it properly is removing those things that do not nourish it well. And like we said, we all live in the world, and there are exceptions to eating well all the time. But if we can feed our children whole quality food, then their bodies are going to recognize that and use the nutrients. So when you talk about food, you have to go when you're talking about the brain and gut axis. So why that's important is there's 100 trillion little critters that live within us, right? And it's really, they have a role. They have a role in our physical and mental health. And so when those get out of balance, there's good and bad, right? And we need them both. But when the bad get out of balance, then that's when we get a lot of disease and a lot of symptoms and things like that. And so it's keeping that gut happy. And so those little microbes that were responsible for lost my train of thought.
That
Go ahead.
the connection between the brain and the
Yeah,
gut.
so there's out of balance. So there's gut disruption and there's hormone disruption. And so hormones, that impacts digestion, metabolism, blood sugar, which also, all that kind of affects the mental, their stress response, their mood, appetite, everything, growth repair, and even the way they absorb nutrients. So if their gut is disrupted, then it can lead to all those other things. So if we start by thinking about what's going on with, if what I'm eating right now, is that going to help the gut or is it going to hurt the gut? And so there are a few things that we could do to help the gut in that instance.
What food would be the number one enemy that you would say stay away from as much as you can?
Well, there's experts on both sides of everything, but from what I've learned and from what I've read, largely gluten and dairy are going to impact the response that your body has to the sensitivities to food. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So I would stay away from gluten and dairy and sugar.
Yes.
Sugar plays, some people, and I wonder who they are, but will say that sugar has no impact on the body. But that's just not,
Really?
I don't think that's the case, that there's no evidence that it impacts, but it does. It causes inflammation.
I've read that from at the brain level, it's more addictive than heroin.
Yes. So that's why it's really important that when you read stories on the internet or with doctors or whoever, that you look at both sides of the issue. Because who pays for the study?
Yes.
Right. So, but there's so much that sugar does in the body. It causes inflammation. 4 hours after you eat sugar, up to 4 hours, your immune system, the response is lowered. So, if you load your kids up with sugar and send them off to school, then their immune response is going to be diminished for up to 4 hours. So you want to be careful with that. So gluten and dairy can trigger an immune response, and that can interfere with gut bacteria. Some of the other things that cause maybe some interference are food dyes, and especially in children with hyperactivity.
Yes.
Yeah. So you know what, like red 40, yellows, and they're even in pickles, right? So you have to read labels. Wow. You have to become a really good label reader. Yeah, food dyes, candies, pickles. I'm surprised at some of the places I've seen food dyes used. Yeah, mustard, ketchup. So read a label. Use a natural food to color the food.
Wow, I am going to start looking at my mustard and and the pickles I buy. I mean, as a general rule, I would think that staying away as much as possible from processed food is a rule. But as you mentioned, you have the condiments and everything else that we put with our food that we don't talk about a lot.
Exactly. But when I was going back to sugar really quick, excess sugar can interfere with those neurotransmitters that keep the mood stable. And so it also causes inflammation in the hippocampus. Right. And so that's the area of your brain that's in charge for organizing and storing memories and the emotions that go with them. So if your child is having issues studying or learning, having the cognitive behavior type of thing, so that sugar would be something to think about for that. But you're right. If we have food that's closely made to nature and not highly refined, we're much better off with our way our children behave, the way adults behave. And so if you think about, well, for men, I actually forgot to look how much this should be. One study I saw said 4 tablespoons a day for a child. It's 6 teaspoons for a woman and 9 teaspoons for a man of sugar is what's recommended per day. Okay. And that's an upper level. 1 can of soda is the upper level for a man. Right. So if our kids are drinking big gulps, or, we won't even get started on artificial sweeteners, but that's probably worse for them than the regular sugar.
Yes.
But so if you're talking about 4 tablespoons a day, is the maximum for a child, just consider how much sugar that your child is getting in their diet. And I'm not talking about fruit. I'm
No.
talking about highly refined processed sugar.
Yes.
And, use things like honey or maple syrup or
Agave.
agave. Well, even agave, check the studies on that, because they're showing that agave is the fructose, and it's really hard on the liver, the processing of the
Wow.
liver. So even agave may not be the best thing to use, because
Okay.
it's one of those things that's really highly touted as a health food.
I know that my father had diabetes, and I started lowering the amount of sugar, and he was using agave because the glycemic index is lower,
Mhm.
but I didn't know that it could impact the liver.
Yeah, it's very hard on the liver.
Okay,
So
that's
so
good to
avoid
know.
things like high fructose corn syrup,
Yeah.
fructose, straight glucose. When you were talking about it's hard to change the diet.
Yes.
And I've had friends, and even myself, it's easier to give somebody what they want than what they should have.
Yes.
But it's hard to change the diet, but it's also hard to live with the troubling behavior. So
Exactly.
you
It's
have to kind of choose
combination.
your hard.
Especially
you
with
know.
teenagers, it can be exhausting, really
Mm-hmm.
exhausting.
Yeah.
And as far as changing the diet, people usually are very extreme. What I see around me is stay away from this and stay away from that in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always work. I know for me, I try not to eat bad stuff, but I usually do moderation, because if I put in my head to remove something, and I eat pretty healthy, but just the fact that I know that I can't have it, I'm going to be stressed already. And the stress on the body will be unhealthy as well, because we create biochemicals of stress, which
Mm-hmm.
will lead to inflammation as well. So you also have to pick being smart about that instead of being
Yeah.
extreme.
Yeah. And I think part of that goes to, um, instead of being a victim, I
Yes,
can't have it, is knowing that we have choice,
I choose.
right? I
Mhm.
choose. So I choose to feel like this when I eat too much sugar or dairy, or I choose to feel like this when I eat lots of fruits and veggies and a piece of fruit. You know, um, it's I don't think it should have to be either or, because I think we should celebrate life, right?
Yes.
And if having a piece of cake doesn't make you ill, then go. If you're going to have that piece of cake, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Celebrate it. Don't eat it with
With
stress
guilt.
or
Yeah.
regret or
Yeah.
guilt.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
It's all about, it comes back very often to awareness
Mm-hmm.
and doing it consciously, instead of doing it unconsciously. Because when you eat, if you start eating with awareness, with mindfulness, first of all, you're going to be satisfied earlier, because you're there, you're in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And make it, I don't know if everybody is like that, but making it pretty is also already satisfying your brain before you even start eating. So
Yes.
adding color, like all kinds of vegetables with different colors, uh, a variety of healthy oil. You can change
Mm-hmm.
what you eat. It doesn't have to be something boring or that doesn't have taste. It can be delicious.
It can be delicious and still be healthy for you. And you were talking about mindful, and include your children in the preparation process.
Yes.
We're in that being grateful for where it came from. And we were talking about the gut and the gut health. So some simple things that parents can start teaching themselves and their children to do that makes a big difference in their digestion is really, when your mom said chew your food,
Yes.
mom was right. It's so important because it starts those enzymes going that helps break down the food so our bodies can absorb all those nutrients. So if they're chewing their food properly, if you're being mindful and we've lost the art of sitting for most of us sitting around the table and enjoying a meal together, having conversations.
Yeah.
So often people are in front of the TV, or somebody's in their bedroom eating, somebody else, oh, I'm not hungry yet, they come eat later. But I would really encourage people to go back to that, as much as possible,
Yes.
that dinner around the table and building the relationships with your children, those times of conversation that you can talk about why we eat the way we do, and being grateful for the food on the table is really important.
And that's actually, I had a conversation with my kids not so long ago, because them being teenagers now, they go and come and do stuff. And I really, when they were young, we used to eat every dinner together. Now
Yeah.
that they are older, they have their own activities and they do stuff. But I still insist on 2 to 3 dinners a week,
That's awesome.
because it's not only about eating, it's also about the memories that you're going to have. And it will have such an impact even on how they respond to peer pressure,
Mhm.
because they feel included. Very often, human beings need connection. If you don't connect with your kids, somebody else will find a way to connect with them. And that can be a very unhealthy situation. So make an
Exactly.
effort to connect. That's a primal need for us.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that we meet this need for our kids as much as you can.
Yeah.
Even if your kids say they don't want to, maybe I know with my kids and my friends sometimes are very surprised because I still take them to hike with me. And they're like, and they agree, teenagers, they come with you. I said, I don't give them a choice. I'm a little bit forceful sometimes. But you know what? At the end, they enjoy and
They
they come
enjoy
back
it.
satisfied.
And those are the things that they remember
Yes,
in 5 or 10 years or whatever. Can I give you a few suggestions for
yes,
types of food?
of course.
Okay, so you mentioned good quality oils, right? So you want to start with avoid vegetable oils, stick with
Yes.
coconut oil, avocado oil, that kind of thing. But lots of fruits and veggies, whole foods. And I would just say, especially if you have, I would say with anybody, switch to organic as much as possible,
Yeah.
especially your meats and your dairy,
Mhm.
because there's so many hormones and antibiotics in those that if your kids are experiencing any kind of behavior problems, I would for sure switch to organic, especially with your meat and dairy products.
Um, I'm gonna
Lots of and
just
water. Teach your kids how to drink water.
yes,
Yeah.
because even though so in my house I rarely buy drinks, even juices, because I have a juicer. So if we
Hmm.
want juice, we can make it because it's much healthier than the one you buy in the store. But sometimes my kids want something, so we buy some juice. But as a general rule, we drink water. But what I notice, and here being in Vegas, you need to drink a lot because it's dry. And my kids don't drink enough, and even myself sometimes. So I have to remind them and make sure that if they don't like the taste of water, you can add a drop of essential oil. Good quality essential oil in there will make a difference. What I do is I also buy mint and lemon.
Hmm.
I put it in the water, and if they really want something sweet, I add honey
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
mix. So that
Yeah.
way, it's like meeting in the middle between what they want and what you want. It's
Yeah.
about trying to give them some freedom, because they want freedom. When they're teenagers, they're going to fight for it. So you give them a little bit, but you also make sure that what needs to be happening is happening. And as a
That's
mom,
great.
it's difficult. For moms, it's like so many of us, and I had to work on myself a lot to not feel uncomfortable, like I was mentioning, in times of conflicts, because some conflicts are necessary.
Hmm.
And the earlier you start with being at ease with, even though you leave some space for the individual, but make sure that what they need to receive, they receive as much as possible, even if you don't feel good about it, even if you feel that you disappoint them in some way because you don't buy the soda or whatever they want, be at ease. And it's not only with your kids, in all relationships. If we can't
Right.
set boundaries, we're in deep trouble. Deep, deep trouble.
Yeah, and to think about when we're talking about food choices, and with your kids, if they're eating things like pizza and hot dogs and highly processed foods, the one thing that's missing is the fiber,
Yeah.
right? And so those bacteria in your gut, they need the fiber, and you need that fiber to move the stool through your body, and also that water, because if that's one of the first signs of a breakdown, right? If your stool is not moving through your body, that something else is going on in the body that can lead to some of those behavior issues that we're talking about. So
And there is good bacteria and bad bacteria, and the bad one is feeding out of those carbohydrates like the pizza and all these things.
they love it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. They love the sugar. They feed on the sugar. But the good bacteria feed off the veggies and the fruit and all that. So it's who are you going to feed, right? Who do you want to feed? You want to
Yes.
feed the bad bacteria or the good bacteria?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not just a taste thing with the food that you want to offer your kids. It's that they need that fiber in their body to make sure that it's functioning properly.
So in your book, I know it's a toolkit. So you give people tools to get to a healthier state of health. No, not healthier state of health. Doesn't make sense.
A healthier state.
Healthier. Because I know you coach people too, right? Or you're going to start coaching. Yeah.
I coach. Yeah.
Okay. So where can they find information? You also have a podcast.
Yes.
Which is called the same name as your book.
Wake the Health Up.
Yeah. If they want to start, but they don't know where to start, they don't know what to do, where can they find some information about you or connect with you?
My website is wakethehealthup.co. The book is available on Amazon. It really is. It's a little bit about some of the things that we don't even understand are interfering with our ability to have good health. So it's kind of highlighting some of those things, and then giving you the tools of how do you implement those changes. So I think the book would be a good resource. You can connect with me on wakethehealthup.co. You can just there's an opportunity to schedule, and we can just have a discovery call and see if I would love to hear about their health goals and if I would be able to help them or not.
And of course, I have to ask my questions, the two questions I ask every guest, because this is really something that is dear to my heart: self-love.
Yeah.
Many women don't even know what is their definition of self-love. So I would like to hear, what is your definition?
I spent many years not really understanding what self-love was, and definitely not practicing it. But for me, it's that, God created me and created me for a purpose, and to step into that and to learn how to love me for who I was, how I looked, how I was made, and then take care of that body is the ultimate act of self-love, is to feed it, to nurture it, to take care of the body that I have.
Yeah. Self-care. So you answered my second question, because it's like, how do you do that in your life? So I suspect you do that from many angles, with food, with good sleep.
Food. I used to think that burning the candle at both ends was really I've arrived. I can burn the candle at both ends. Well, I wasn't as bright as I thought I was, So I get good sleep. If you have access to an infrared sauna, that's my favorite thing to do. Get a massage. Massage is not a luxury. It really is a priority, even for your kids. I think taking your kids, you can go to the Northwest Career College. They have a school over there, and it's very inexpensive to get a really great massage. So there's ways to get an inexpensive massage, and then eat well, and then feed your mind and body, and be in relationship with people you care about.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. It encompasses everything. Yeah. If there was one thing you would like to tell people about waking up to be healthier, or anything at all, what would it be?
You don't have to be your genetics. There's things that you can do to turn on, turn off genes largely. Genetic illnesses are a small percentage. Most of it is by the choices that we make, and we have the power to choose differently, and we can start today and to make tomorrow differently.
Yes.
And we are in choice. We have the power to choose. And because you're worth it, right? You are worth it. Your children are worth it. And don't ever think, well, I made a mistake back here. Don't think like that. You that was then. Now is now. It's time to wake up and move on and be healthy. Because it's not about age.
Especially with teenagers, I always tell people, because I wish I had known more about what I know today when my kids were younger.
Me too.
But it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Never too late.
Yeah. Because it's really important now, because the more we get in some of the things that are going on with our food supply and everything, it's going to be more and more important for our kids to learn about those things so they can help turn it around.
Yes.
So that good quality fresh air, water, and food is available to everybody.
That's crucial nowadays. It's something we're going to have to do if we want to stay on this planet. Yeah. It's not even a joke anymore.
We can't build humanity on potato chips.
No. First of all, if you look at potato chips, look how strong they are. You do like that and you crush them. So imagine your body as a potato chip. That's a great image. Thank you so much, Devra. And so for people who want to connect with Devra, I'll put the link in the description. Okay. And you can also put a comment here, because if there are questions, we can come and answer them if you want. I mentioned earlier that if you're suffering if you are alone, suffering or struggling, join us, join a community, find something. I have a Facebook group. If you want the link, just comment here with "I want in," and I will send you the link. It actually will go out to you automatically, so you can be part of something as a support for you, especially if you're talking about changing your food. Having people around you who are like-minded will help you a lot, because the information that Devra just shared is not mainstream yet. I wish it was mainstream, Devra. I think more and more it's getting there, but we're still very much a minority of people who think and know that information.
Yes, and if they want more information, ongoing information, if they'd like, over on the website wakethehealthup.co, they can subscribe to get ongoing newsletters or information or whatever.
And follow you.
We want to make this mainstream information.
Yes.
Right. So parents aren't struggling. Cool. It shouldn't be so hard for parents to have to feed their children. Yeah. So I would encourage your listeners to even connect with you, because being part of a community and having a resource is so important.
We always do better when we're together.
Yes, better together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Devra.
Thank you, Muriel.
For our audience, I'll see you next week, alone or with another guest. I don't know yet. And meanwhile, go nurture your body, your mind, and your soul. See you.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye.